Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for tuning in for another episode. As some of you may be aware, Core Tackle has come out with swim jigs. We've had them out now for a few weeks on the website. We've sent some off to Tackle Warehouse, a few other retailers as well. We'll be getting them. Don't have a whole bunch of them, but we are sending them out, and the feedback has been really good on them. But I continue to get one question, so I thought I would address that on here. And that question specifically is, we've noticed that you have a 2-aught quarter ounce version. Is that a mistake? Why do you have a 2-aught? Like, why do you have that when you have got a 4-aught quarter ounce? And the reality is, it's our finesse version. It's a small swim jig. Now, that's something that I've wanted to make for a long time, to the point where I actually was hand tying them myself and making really small swim jigs. Just for comparison's sake, you can see this is our standard 4-aught version. This is the Goldilocks color, and then we've got the little 2-aught Goldilocks color. So you can see there is a pretty substantial size difference. Now in this case, the trailer that I've got here is a 2.8 Kitech fat impact swing. So you can see it's a really small little bait. And then this one, I've got a 3.5-inch Berkeley the Deal trailers, threaded all the way up the bait keeper. So from a comparison size, you can see it's substantially smaller. So the question is, when would you ever want to throw a small swim jig? And the reality is, guys, if you're not doing it, I think you're kind of missing out, because I've been able to capitalize on some very specific bites where a small swim jig outproduces a standard size swim jig all of the time. So I want to provide you with those. Before I do get into that, I want to remind you though, if you want to support my channel and you do need to purchase tackle, please use my Tackle Warehouse affiliate link. I'll put the link in the video description for you. Really good way to support the channel. The little bit I make from that comes right back into making content for everyone out there, and hopefully helps us all catch a few more fish. All right, so the little 2-aught Core Tackle swim jig. This guy right here is an absolute beast, and there's a few times where I love to throw it. So let's talk about the first time. The first time is as a replacement to a small swim bait. So in a lot of instances, you might just throw a 2.8 Kitech or a 3.3 Kitech by itself out in open water for suspended fish. Well, in those same circumstances, I find that if you throw the small swim jig, this little 2-aught version, you're giving the fish a look at something they haven't seen before. And a lot of times it generates a better size bite. You know, if you take a little swim bait out and you're fishing around spotted bass or smallmouth or even largemouth, a lot of times you catch a lot of 10, 12 inchers. Well, as soon as you throw this on, you kind of weed those out and your average fish goes up. So for me, especially in a tournament situation, or if I'm trying to weed out some of those smaller fish, really easy way to do it. Now, I will say in that circumstance, if I'm fishing open water, I'll actually remove the wire weed guard. I will just pull it right out, or break it off or cut it off, because there's no need for it at that point, and I don't necessarily want it, because it just allows me to have even better hookups from that standpoint. But I really like using it as a replacement to just a small swim bait. It was pretty mind-boggling to me how successful that was the first couple times I went out and threw this instead of just basically the trailer, the swim bait. So that's one instance where I really like to do it. Another has to do with the times of year where the bass are really keying in on small bait fish. So where I live here, we get periods throughout the year where we have the primary forage, which is emerald shiner. We have lots and lots and lots of tiny emerald shiner. Well, when the bass are keying in on that, that's when this guy becomes better than the full-size swim jig, because the fish are really keying in on that small bait fish. So by downsizing the swim jig, I still have the same ability to throw it into some of the heavier cover that I see here on the river, but yet give the fish something that matches the forage that they're after. And I'll see my bite ratio go up significantly when I do that. So that's another time period where I really like it. Another where I feel like this shines is fishing skinny, shallow rivers and streams. So I fish a lot of places where I'll take my little flat bottom boat. I've got a jet drive motor on it, and I'll put myself into position where a lot of times I'll just park the boat and I'll get out and wade shallow riffles or shallow rocks, the type of places that you might take a kayak to even. And from that standpoint, you're talking about having skinny water. A lot of times it's faster moving water. And if I were to throw the standard 4/0 quarter ounce size, because the water is moving swifter, a lot of times my bait gets pulled out of the area faster. Well, by throwing the same weight but smaller profile, this actually doesn't get whipped down current real fast by that shallow, skinny water. It allows me to keep it in the strike zone faster. So from that standpoint, I actually like the downsize in those situations. Plus, a lot of times when I'm fishing those shallower rivers, the forage species tend to be a little bit smaller anyways, and I just feel like I have better luck with smaller baits. So that was actually one of the original reasons why I wanted a small little swim jig. I will also mention that you can fish these really well and effectively on spinning gear as well. So for those of you that don't necessarily want to fish bait casting gear but want to throw a swim jig on spinning gear, the little finesse size is really good for that. I also like it just generally when I'm fishing clear water. You know, in my neck of the woods here, we've got either tannic stain lakes or we've got natural lakes that are generally very, very clear. I'm talking, 10 to 20 foot visibility. And in those instances, a swim jig or a jig in general is a lot of times not the bait that I'm going to be choosing unless it's a really small finesse size. So, if I'm flipping a jig in that situation, I'm probably throwing a really small little micro finesse jig. If I want to fish maybe through grass, because a lot of those natural lakes have grass in them, I'm going to be fishing a much smaller little finesse swim jig like this guy. So if my water visibility is very, very clear, I like to go down in size generally. And then the last thing that I like to do with it is if I'm fishing a lake that's got a lot of spotted bass and floating docks where the spotted bass are getting in and around those floating docks, I like to downsize to a little finesse size one because those spotted bass tend to be nippers at your bait, meaning they will come up and they'll knock it, they'll hit it, they'll grab the tail. And I've had a lot of instances where if I'm throwing the full size jig, they tend not to get it. If I throw the little jig, they tend to get that better and I end up getting better hookups. So from that standpoint, I see a definite need for that too. So don't think just because it's a 2/0 hook, it's this little tiny swim jig, that has no place, because it very, very much has a place. I would not have made it. I mean, honestly, we came out with that because I wanted it, like, because it's something that I've been using for a while. I don't feel like there's many other options that are on the market, and there's a time and a place where your small finesse swim jigs will outproduce a full-size swim jig. So hopefully that answers some of the questions, because I've gotten a ton of questions regarding the little 2/0 core tackle swim jig and whether that's an error or why we came out with it. And those are definitely some of my favorite times and places to use it. Now, if you're using the 2/0 core tackle swim jig already, I'd love to know from you guys in the comment section, where are you having success with it so that other viewers can learn from you guys as well. So thanks for watching, guys. I appreciate all of the support. Stay tuned. We'll have a new video coming out tomorrow.